One of the biggest things that I've been told throughout life and learned to kind of accept is you can only control what you can control. I can't control making a team sometimes. That's sometimes just the coach's decision, but I can control my effort. I can't control my performance. I can control how much work I put in, but I'm not going to be able to control my ice time in a game. I can't control what line I'm put on. So there's no need to focus on the things that you can't control because it's just a distraction to the game.
Welcome to Rinkside Rundown, the podcast that puts you right in the heart of women's hockey. I'm your host, Chris Sinclair, and each week I'm on a mission to showcase the incredible women who are lighting up the ice across the globe. Get ready as I chat with rising stars, seasoned pros, and all the game changers making waves in the world of women's hockey that you won't find anywhere else. So, let's dive into the exciting world of women's hockey and make sure to click that subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode. Hello and welcome back to Rinkside Rundown, your go-to podcast for everything women's hockey. I'm your host, Chris Sinclair, and today I'm joined by Reichen Kirchmair, a forward with Providence College. Reichen, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. I'm really excited to learn a lot more about, obviously, where things started for you, as well as your incredible collegiate career. We're going to get into the specifics about that in just a minute. But it seems like because we're just starting off this conversation, the first time you've been on the show, welcome once again, it makes sense for us to start at the beginning. So, growing up in Oakville, Ontario, how did hockey first come into your life?
Yeah, so my dad played hockey at a pretty high level, and my mom played competitive soccer. So I was kind of bound to get put into sports at a pretty young age. So when I was about 3, my dad would take me out to like open skates and kind of hold me while I'm just kind of gliding on the ice. And then when I was 5, I started house league hockey for 2 years, or I guess they call it Timbits in Canada. And then 2 years later, when I was 6 or 7, I moved to rep hockey, competitive hockey in Oakville. And then I kind of just took off from there playing at the highest level. And when I was 10, we moved houses and my dad built me a shooting pad in my basement, which I got quite a bit of use out of. And even to this day, when I'm home for the summers, I still get a bit of use out of it. But my dad also coached me a lot growing up, which kind of was a good way for us to connect. And it kept my interest in the game going for a long time. And he's always been a huge support.
Now, I know this is a little while ago, but do you remember when you first put on those skates? Do you remember, did you fall in love with it right away, or was it like a growing passion for you where it only happened over time?
Yeah, I definitely don't necessarily remember when I was 3 going on those open skates. My dad will tell me about it, but when I first played house league hockey, I stepped on the ice and I fell immediately and did snow angels. So it took a little bit, but by the end of that year, I kind of figured out the ropes of skating and then had a pretty fun and successful second year of house league, which my dad coached. That was the first year he ever coached me. And then from there on, I kind of just continued to fall in love with the game and develop.
Well, I love that you weren't discouraged by falling. You just embraced that you were already on the ice. You may as well make the most out of that moment. So that's great. You've mentioned family and the fact that it was inevitable that you were going to become an athlete. But when it comes to family, they do play a really, really important role, especially early on. Getting you in and making sure that you encourage you along the way, but also be supportive of you as you continue your career. What has family meant to you throughout your career, especially way back in those early days of Timbits hockey and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, they've always been a huge part of it and continue to be a huge part of it. Kind of like I said, my dad coached me a lot growing up. So that was awesome. I remember being a kid, and one of my favorite things would be after practice, we'd go with my friend whose dad was the other coach to Tim Hortons, and I'd always get a hot chocolate and a donut after our early morning skates because we got the worst ice time because we were just little. But that was awesome. And then my mom, while my dad was at work all day waiting to come meet me at my practices, my mom would drive me to skill sessions, to training, to my practices, or to my games, wherever it really was. And then my younger brother has always been a big support, and He's only 2 years younger, so he just started university, but he tries to come down here 1 to 2 times a year to come and see me play, and it's always one of my favorite weekends when he comes.
Yeah, so, not to skip too much to the present because we have so much to talk about in between, but in the same kind of vein, when it comes to family, especially as you've looked to approach your collegiate career, what's that support felt like now with this incredible career that you've had collegiately?
It's really awesome. As much as COVID, it's kind of been a bit of a curse and a blessing because for my dad's work, he's been able to do a lot of it remotely, which means being able to work remotely on a Friday, come down to Providence for the weekend and watch my games. Um, Anytime we have two home games or a game only like an hour away in Boston, which is the nice thing about Hockey East, is a lot of the schools are quite close together, which allows my parents to come down quite a bit. Um, and I always look forward. It's my favorite weekends when they're down here and able to watch me play in person. And if they're not watching me in person, they've got it up on the TV back home.
I love that. Um, and when you think about Oakville as well, your hometown, what was the hockey culture like in Oakville? And maybe when you go back, do you see that how much it's evolved since you were there last?
Yeah, I think Oakville was definitely a great place for me to start my development, and there's still a pretty strong program to this day. But the way youth hockey has changed over the years is really different from when I played. So when I was 10 or so, everyone played for their hometown. You didn't leave and go play in Stony Creek or you didn't play in Etobicoke until you hit that Bantam U14 junior mark. Whereas nowadays, I think you find 10-year-olds leaving their hometowns to go play for the best team somewhat close by them. Whereas when I played, like I said, everyone from Oakville played in Oakville. So it was a really competitive atmosphere because you were sometimes you were the minor age group and you're now competing with the majors because it's two age groups. And you always want to be able to make the top team even as one of the younger players.
And just to kind of keep in the on the family train here for just a moment, what was it like for you though as well, especially those early days where, like you said, like you didn't have to play in a totally different city. You didn't have to move to continue your career. You had the opportunity to stay home and hopefully live some sort of normal life because you got to also be around family. What was that like for you as well? And how do you think that also helped with your development on the ice?
It was definitely helpful because, for one, we lived in Oakville, so rinks were a 10-15 minute drive, any practice. Um, but also, my grandparents, my mom's side, live in Burlington. So, for them growing up, it's this town right next to us, so they always came to my games. So, I'd always have a pretty big crowd of family at my games whenever they could all come.
That's amazing. And I think that's so important for, especially again, early on in your career, because there's, it can be quite overwhelming, even now moving into the collegiate stage as well. But especially early on when you're trying to balance being an athlete, trying to be better, growing, developing both on and off the ice, to have family there. And especially as you mentioned, have like family also close enough by that they can come and support you at your games must have made such a difference for you. So it's great to hear that, and that you were able to start off your career in such a way. And thinking back to those days, who would you say were some of your role models, or influences? And this can be on the ice. This could also be off the ice.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about my family, and obviously they played a huge part. But other than them, I've always been a huge Toronto Maple Leafs fan. So my dad would always take me to games when I was younger, and even to this day, I love going home and going to their games. But on the women's side, I was lucky enough to be coached by Megan Bozek when I was pretty young. So she's always had a pretty big role in my life. And then also, I did some Brianne Jenner camps because she's from Oakville, which is my hometown, when I was young. And they've both really helped me over the years and kind of helped shape me into the player I am today.
And I love that you brought that up because we are going to talk about that in a little bit more in depth in just a moment. But absolutely, when you have those two kinds of that top tier talent as those role models, ooh, is that inspiring? That's for sure. But now I'm going to flip the script on you. How does it feel? You were growing up. As you were growing up, there wasn't necessarily, and we're going to get into the PWHL and all those sorts of things as well, but there wasn't the same level of coverage, as, accessibility as there is now when it comes to women's hockey. So it was sometimes difficult to find those women that could be those role models. As you mentioned right at the beginning, it was like, Toronto Maple Leafs, NHL. That's really all you could see, except for every 4 years, right? What does it mean to you to know that you are now a role model and an inspiration and an influence on the next generation of women's hockey that's coming up behind you?
I mean, it's definitely really cool. Like you said, I didn't really have that to look up to growing up all the time, unless there was the Worlds or the Olympics. But now we have such a bigger platform in women's hockey that we can use. And I think as I continue to grow in hockey, I'm going to try to use my platform to give back to what I necessarily didn't have growing up.
I love, and that's what's so important, right? Like, you have fallen in love with this sport. You've taken it thus far to a collegiate career, and this is just the beginning for you. It's going to be a long hockey career for you. It's great to hear that you're also looking to give back. That's fantastic. You had mentioned Etobicoke. That's a place that you spent 3 years of your junior career, and as someone who knows that program fairly well, as you can see from the jersey I have behind me, that that program, as you are well aware, has developed incredible talent, and that talent is littered across NCAA, which is just incredible to see. What was that experience like for you to be a part of that program and to be a part of those teams and to make those friendships as you have with a lot of those former teammates of yours?
Yeah, it was amazing. I played Oakville all my life until junior, so I didn't know a lot of people outside of the Oakville community in hockey, and I was welcomed so well into the Etobicoke community. My teammates were great, and Joe specifically gave me such a huge opportunity as an underage player coming into junior. So I was supposed to play a year of midget and then go play junior for 2 years, but Joe gave me the chance to come and skip midget and play 3 years in junior instead of just two. Um, and that decision was ultimately what was really best for my development, and not just as a player, but also as a person. And those were some of the best teams I really played on. We won so many tournaments, we won regular season games, and it just prepared me so well for Team Ontario camps, Team Canada, and just university and life in general. And I just look back at that time um, as such a positive thing on my career. And I'm always going to be grateful towards Joe and do whatever I can to give back to him and the program.
I'm sure he's going to be excited to hear that shout out there. I want to know more specifically as well, that program and Joe. Like, how do you feel? Winning is great. Obviously, it's great. It's a great confidence boost for a player, but that's only one aspect of what it means to win and to kind of have that, to build that mentality. What do you think it was specifically about Joe and about the program that he has created throughout his time with the team? What do you think specifically about that made you into the player that you are now?
It's the culture there. Joe always preaches to leave the jersey in the better place than you found it. So every year he brings in more players that are going to represent not the last name, but the name on the front of the jersey to the best of their ability. And he creates this culture and environment there where everyone's welcomed and it's super competitive and everyone pushes each other, but it's not to the point where people become mean. It's always a healthy environment.
Yeah, and I've heard as well that in some of my previous conversations with some former players, that one of the things that really stood out to them was that he didn't treat it like it was junior hockey, or like that it was like he really wanted everyone to go in with the mentality that it's like, this is the OHL. Like, this is a really top tier program, but a top tier league. Do you kind of feel like you got that those sorts of feelings from his approach to just the league in general and the compete level, that it is very, very, I mean, it's called the U22 elite. It's elite for a reason. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, definitely. And I do give a lot of credit to Joe because I do think he kind of paved the way for a lot of the other teams in that league to start treating their other players like, for instance, they're in the OHL. My first year, we were one of the only teams that would come in with snacks and all this extra equipment. But now you walk into a junior game and you see both teams have this. Every team has a social media now, every team is promoting their team. I think that league has grown and it's become a great stepping stone for players to go there and then come in and be prepared for university.
And when we think, great segue, so thank you for assisting on that one, because when I think about preparing you, before we even get into the incredible collegiate career that you've had thus far, you had the opportunity also to, as you had mentioned, to represent Team Canada as well. What were those experiences? And not to mention, obviously, winning gold as well. So shout out to that. That's incredible. Congratulations to you on that. What was that experience like for you?
It's honestly probably one of the coolest experiences I've ever had and one of my most proudest moments. It took a lot of hard work to make it there, and there were so many competitive girls, my year specifically, trying to make that team. But my experience was definitely unique with COVID. We had one tryout camp, and then we were supposed to have they'd pick the team, and we'd have the tournament in Sweden in December. But then because of COVID, the tournament got canceled. So then they were trying to find a new solution, and they were able to come up with one, which was to have another camp or tryout camp. And then the tournament would be held in June in Wisconsin instead of Sweden. So from there, it was kind of a up and down experience of emotions. But the tournament itself, our team was pretty special in the sense that we had this kind of crazy comeback story from losing to Finland, which has rarely been done by Canada in the under 18s. And then we lost to the US 7-1 in round robin. And then we're able to beat Sweden, beat Slovakia in the quarterfinals, and then come back, beat Finland. And then we faced the US in the finals again. And obviously, after losing 7-1 to them in the round robin, it's definitely one of the most nerve-wracking games I've ever played in and the biggest game I've ever played in. But we were able to come back and win, which was honestly just one of the most amazing moments I've ever experienced and probably the best team I've ever played on.
So this is thank you for setting this up, because I think this is going to be really important to kind of really get a glimpse as to what it feels like to compete at that level and the takeaways. Like, we can talk about obviously a medal, that's amazing, of course. There are also other things that are big takeaways, and I want to know from you, first of all, as you mentioned, overcoming that adversity. What do you think that did for you as an individual? Before we even talk about the hockey side of things, having to overcome the nerves, but also knowing, that your path to the gold medal wasn't necessarily what you had expected or hoped for. Overcoming that adversity, what did that do for you as an individual?
It kind of just showed me that, like, you can be down and whatever, but there's always this other opportunity where you can come back on top. Like, just because it doesn't go well at first, it might end up in the end going your way. I even related to my season this year. At Christmas break, we were in second last place, not doing very well, and we somehow managed to come back and finish in fifth place, almost fourth, and almost third place. Actually, I think we were fourth. We finished fourth place this year. So I've overcome a lot of adversity in my life, and I think through sports, it's kind of shown me that anywhere in my life, I can kind of overcome this.
Okay, great. Yeah. And I want to know as well, representing your country, that's not something obviously everyone gets an opportunity to do. When you think back to how it all started for you, all those snow angels you were doing on the ice as a kid, to that moment where you got to put on that maple leaf for the first time, do you remember what it felt like to put that jersey on and to look in the mirror and say, like, I've made it? Do you remember that moment and what that felt like for you?
Yeah, they made it pretty special for us, obviously, because, like I said, we had been through so much just to get there. A lot of us had originally made the team, but then they told us there was another tryout camp, so we had to make the team all over again. So that moment where we were able to finally, like, almost a sigh of relief, being able to put that jersey on and be like, I can finally represent my country, and this is what I've been working towards, was honestly one of the most amazing moments.
What were some of the other takeaways for you from that experience?
Honestly, it was just such a competitive atmosphere that I think helped prepare me so well for university and just life in general because everyone there's a good person, everyone there's a good hockey player, and it really just comes down to everyone's got to work hard, everyone's got to be present in the moment. And I've just had such a great experience with it that I look back on it as one of my most favorite moments from my hockey career.
And I just wish that there was a way for all of us to experience that, but instead we just have to live vicariously through people like yourself. So once again, congratulations on the tournament win, coming home with gold medal. That's incredible. As we look at more present you, more current times for you, your collegiate career, you had an incredible junior career. And then you made the jump, obviously, to the NCAA with Providence College. What made you decide Providence was the right spot for you?
So I was actually really young when I committed. I was, I think, 14 years old at the time. So the whole committing to a university process has definitely changed. I believe players can't start talking to colleges or universities till summer going into their junior year. But back when I committed, it was kind of like a free for all. So I committed when I was 14 and I toured a lot of schools. But once again, I'm so young. I didn't know what I wanted to do really in school. But there was something about Providence that just felt right to me, whether it was the school size, which I really liked the idea of a smaller campus. The campus in general is super nice. The location of it being in Hockey East, and like I said earlier, all the schools not being a plane ride away, but rather just a short bus ride was really nice. And then they have great academics here, and the athletics were also amazing. And then I just got along with the coaches really well. So everything kind of fell into place for me here, and it just felt like the right decision.
Do you remember going back to when you were 14? You know, again, that's a tremendous amount of pressure to make a huge decision. Do you remember what it felt like to make that decision when you were 14?
Yeah, I definitely remember visiting some of the schools that I was talked to at the time, but I committed just before the rule change was going to come into place. So I kind of had two opportunities. One, find a school that I liked and commit to it, or I don't commit and wait till summer of my grade 11, going to my grade 11 year to commit. But in that period of time, I would have had to cut off all communication with all schools I was talking to. So for me, my priority was to see if I can find a school that I would like in this short span of time that I have to do it now. And when I found Providence and everything started to fall into place, it just kind of felt like the right decision.
You know, speaking of a right decision, obviously, again, just like in junior, you've continued that incredible hockey skill set because, you know, you've been with the program now for 3 years. How do you think over that time, especially and it's still crazy to think that you made this decision when you were 14, but over the 3 years with the program, how do you think your game has evolved? Both, I think, both you as a hockey player, but also you as an individual too.
Yeah, I came to Providence right after the Hockey Canada tournament. Like I said, it was a weird year, so the tournament ended up being held in June, and then I came to Providence in July for a month to do summer school to get used to the environment, get used to the coaches, the facilities. Um, but I think coming from that Hockey Canada environment, which was such a competitive environment, into Providence really helped me kind of get into my freshman year already kind of in the idea of what a competitive hockey environment looks like. Um, and then last year as well, with my coaches, I set some goals for myself for this year, which I think kind of helped me stay on track throughout this year specifically. One of which was I needed to really lock in on my defensive game. And if I can be more defensive, I can become more offensive. So my plus minus my first 2 years wasn't great. I had a -5 last year, and this year I was able to get it to a plus 22, which I'll take. It was one of the best in Hockey East, I believe, which I'm super proud of because I was able to achieve a goal I set, and overall that one small goal had a huge impact on my year, my team's year, and just overall my defensive game has been that one focus that I've continued to progress over these 3 years that I think allowed me to be so successful this year.
What do you think, or how do you think it feels to especially as you mentioned, you set these goals and then you're able to achieve them. What does that feel like for you to be able to do so? And like you said, be really successful in this case, adjusting that plus minus.
Yeah, this year for sure, like I kind of mentioned earlier, was an odd year for us, but a good year because we started off going into Christmas and second last place, and we're kind of able to completely turn our season around. And one of the things that I know helped me achieve my goal, but also helped our team do this, is just before break for Christmas, we kind of changed our lines. And my two line mates ended up being Audrey Knapp and Hannah Johnson, and we really just meshed well together. There was this chemistry that kind of came out of nowhere, and we started producing and becoming a real threat out on the ice. And if a team wanted to lock down on me, then they had my two other line mates to worry about, and vice versa. There wasn't just one of us going, all three of us were always going, which was a huge part of our team success and my individual success this year.
And I feel like this is a natural segue into speaking of your success this season. I want to start off by once again sharing congratulations on being named the recipient of the Cami Granato Award as Hockey East Player of the Year. I'm going to pause there for a moment because I know that this is a team sport, but I still want to give you the opportunity to kind of share what it feels like to hear that you are the recipient, that you won this award. All that hard work has certainly paid off. What does it feel like to be awarded such an incredible award?
Yeah, it was crazy, but also super awesome. Not only for myself as a great accomplishment, but I think as our team in general. I'm pretty sure the last time Providence won an award like this was 2002, maybe. I could be off on that, but it's something like that. So it doesn't only reflect my development, but it also reflects the team and Providence's culture and development over the years and how we are a strong team and we're continuing to get better and we can win those type of awards. If you player chooses to come here, they're going to have that opportunity.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that, and I love that typical athlete response there. It's sidestep what it means for you, and that it's about the team and the program, and I respect that. But I do again want to say congratulations because it is such an incredible honor, especially as you mentioned. It's been a while since someone from your university had won that award, and I mean after the season you had, when I heard that you were the winner. I mean, it adds up. So once again, congratulations. But to kind of expand on what you said, winning that award draws a lot of attention to not just yourself, but also the program, the systems in place, all of those things that factor into your individual success. What do you think, or how do you think maybe winning that award and that attention has helped to kind of change? I don't want to say the perception, but maybe the perception of a smaller campus like Providence College.
Yeah, I think it's obviously got a huge effect. In hockey specifically, I think when anybody first hears about it, their immediate thought is Northeastern, Boston University, or Boston College. They're the three bigger names, and they're all down in Boston. But I think over the years, Providence has continued to progress and continue to produce some names that are now starting to play in the PWHL. So it's huge, that award for me, but also for the team and the recognition this program can get from it.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned about Hockey East because, as you mentioned, like that's it's a pretty heavy league, right? With some of those bigger universities, as you've mentioned, night after night, you're up against some of the best players in college hockey, and that isn't easy. I want to know what's it been like for you to go against that top talent, and obviously to end up winning quite the prestigious award nonetheless. And maybe what were some of the biggest challenges you had in facing that top tier talent?
Yeah, Hockey East is a super competitive league. Almost every game we played, it was a 1 to 2 goal game. I don't think you get blowouts very often when it comes to our league. And the entire year, there were a handful of us that would be one night I'd be in the lead, the other night somebody else would be in the league. And specifically, my line mate Audrey was right up there with me the entire time. And at the end of the day, it could have been either one of us that ended up in Hockey East with the most amount of points, or it could have been there was a girl on BC that was up there too. It really came down to the wire. And it was anyone's game.
Yeah, and I love that you're also shouting out your teammate because she had quite the season as well. I always loved watching her highlights. Um, you had mentioned earlier about the impact that Megan Bozak and Brianne Jenner had on you, or especially early on in your career. Let's just start off with, how did that come to fruition? How did that uh, scenario come up? And maybe just talk a little bit more specifically about the impact that they both had on you.
Yeah, so Megan was my coach in Pee Wee hockey, which I don't know what age group that is, but it's just what we call it in Canada. Um, and then Brianne, I went to some, like I said, I went to some camps with her growing up. And then I continued to train with Megan after she coached me a little bit, and I went to Brianne's camps for a couple years. But they were both huge impacts because they were people that I could look up to and say, she went to college and played, and now she's on the national team. So they were both big role models in that sense, but even it showed me one special thing I would say is I went to Brianne's camps when I was little, and then 2 summers ago, just before the PWHL was starting, Brianne Jenner was putting together this 3-on-3 league. And it was a mix of college girls and national girls. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the people able to kind of play in this small little 3-on-3 league. But what it showed me is I grew up being taught how to play hockey by her and going to her camps. And now I'm in college playing against her. So it was this kind of full 360 moment that was just super cool.
Yeah, and I think kind of along the same lines as that camp, um, having the chance to learn from them, and obviously they had quite the impact, as unsurprisingly as they would, being the talented individuals both on and off the ice that they are. How do you think that, maybe that overall experience, but certainly, helping to set up those those camps and stuff like that, how do you think that's changed your perspective on what it means to be a mentor?
Yeah, I think they've both been such influential people. I know Megan now does stuff in the broadcasting, and Brienne's obviously a pretty big voice and player that people look up to in women's hockey. So they both show that you can continue to do things with um, your hockey platform, even after you're done in college, or even if you decide to stop playing, there are other paths to go. So there isn't just one way a mentor looks like in women's hockey, but there's a ton of different ways you can continue to mentor young girls throughout life.
And so, that really feels like it would help you to kind of feel a little less pressure about, like you said, there being only one path. Do you feel like they helped you to kind of open up your perspectives and to kind of maybe not put as much pressure on yourself to go down, that there is only one path that you can go down? Do you think that helped you to kind of alleviate some of that pressure as an athlete, especially?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely been, there's teams that I've been left off of before. And while it's hard at first, you kind of learn to deal with it. And it kind of just fuels the fire in you to come back next year even stronger. If I don't make this team, well, I'm going to be even better next year. So they can't say no to me. And I think that mental aspect of just, even if you get told no, like keep going.
Yeah, so I guess if I were to ask for maybe what advice you would have for the next generation, would it be safe to assume that would certainly be one of those things that you would share?
Yeah, that and one of the biggest things that I've been told throughout life and learned to kind of accept is you can only control what you can control. I can't control making a team sometimes. That's sometimes just the coach's decision, but I can't control my effort. I can't control my performance. I can control how much work I put in, but I'm not going to be able to control my ice time in a game. I can't control what line I'm put on. So there's no need to focus on the things that you can't control because it's just a distraction to the game.
Yeah, and it takes you away from enjoying the game as well, which is the whole reason you started doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's shift gears here for a moment and let's talk about the future of women's hockey. And obviously, you will inevitably play a huge role in that. Let's talk about, now that you've won this prestigious award, you talked earlier about setting those goals for yourself. And, one of the most recent ones is helping to improve your defensive game. what are you focused on moving forward for you specifically? And that can be either on the ice or maybe that's off the ice as well.
Yeah, I really want to continue where I left off from this year, next year, going into next year. And I actually just met with my coaches the other day and we talked about how much my defensive game has grown and if I can continue that into next year and continue to put up shots and continue to be playing with my head up, I'm going to be just as successful, if not more successful, as I was. Another important aspect going into next year is that while I am losing my center, my other line mate is still around and we were able to build quite a bit of chemistry this year, and we're hoping to kind of that'll carry into next year.
Yeah, and I guess too, when you think about how this season went for you and how it started off as opposed to how it ended, is that a little bit of extra motivation to head into next year and again just to kind of build off of how this season ended up, well, how it ended for you? Is that fair to say as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think we had a great January and February. We didn't really lose. I think we lost maybe 2 or 3 games to be honest with you, so it was really successful. And I think if we can pick up where we left off, kind of in that win streak, is definitely going to be super helpful. But also this year allows us to know that next year, again, if we don't have the best start, it's not over. The first half doesn't define your season. Like there's always the second half, and you can come back from it.
I think that's good advice as well for any athletes out there too. I love that. Um, when you think about the future of women's hockey, especially with the PWHL, again, just having more viewership, more eyeballs on this sport that you love as much as you do. You know, you've grown up through this sport. What's it been like for you to witness the growth firsthand, especially in Providence as well?
Yeah, it's definitely been huge. Like I said earlier, I remember really only watching the women's hockey teams play in the Olympics or the World Championships growing up, but now there's regular season PWHL games and even our own games. Like I said, if my parents aren't able to come to a game, there's streaming platforms that they're able to watch back home that have announcers pronouncing the game and working with that in different camera angles. So there's not just one time you can watch women's hockey. It's become almost a year-round sport where there's always a women's hockey event going on that's accessible to anybody to really watch.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that you bring up because I know, we can talk about specifics like the bean pod and things like that, but overall, even, you know, last year or the year before, even as recently as that, in Canada, you couldn't really watch NCAA games, women's hockey games. You could watch, obviously, basketball and things like that, but
Yeah.
women's hockey was just not something that you could watch. I've literally watched NCAA women's hockey games up here in Canada. When you think about that, the fact that and like you said, they're broadcasters. It's not just you're not just like watching the game. It's a real experience for you as a viewer. When you think about that as well, what do you think that's going to do for just the growth of women's hockey? Just being able to get more eyeballs on it, just be able to have more people be able to watch it, whether you're in the States or abroad.
I think it's huge because the only way our sport is going to continue to grow is if people buy in and watch it. And the only way they can watch it is if it's being broadcasted out there. I know even as a player, when I played in Hockey Canada tournament, that was the first time I'd ever had my game be broadcasted, and being able to listen to it after and hear people say my name was one of the coolest things. And now in university, having broadcasters do our game every time and rewatching it after sometimes and just hearing what they're saying throughout the game is pretty cool.
Yeah, and you've talked a little bit about it, and I think it's worth highlighting. Uh, the unfortunate reality for so long for so many women was that sure, there was junior levels of hockey, and there's definitely work that needed to be done there, but there was junior hockey, collegiate hockey, and then it was really the next step for you was either a national program or going overseas. So knowing now that there is another path with the PWHL and seeing how successful and how, just we're not even done the second season and they've already surpassed 1 million fans in attendance. And that obviously doesn't even count the viewers watching from home. What is that, or how does that feel for you, knowing that there's still a path, or there's now another path for you to continue in the sport that you love so much?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. As my freshman year, the league wasn't a thing. So it wasn't even something that was on my radar or I was looking at. But now it's become a goal of mine and something that I can look forward to working towards. I'm hoping to keep it going, of course, so that I can eventually get there and play there one day. But it's super competitive right now with only 6 teams. And players are still playing well even in their 30s. So there's a lot of talent in women's hockey. And I think this league has been able to showcase that and give us college players something to continue to look forward to after college that's not necessarily overseas and possibly even close to our hometowns.
And lastly, before we get into the fun segment of the show, um, when you see the PWHL and the success that it's having, there like a big reason for that is an influx in NCAA talent, especially I would say more so this past draft and certainly upcoming draft. I think the initial draft was a lot of the players that the names that everyone knew and were more familiar with. But since then, we've seen a real influx in terms of NCAA talent, making it really difficult to select players because there's just so many good top talent coming out of the NCAA, as well as U Sports here in Canada. When you see that, how inspiring is that to say, hey, there not only is there another path for me, but I know that the PWHL looks at the NCAA as a really good development league. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's huge. I have obviously a couple teammates and then a couple of friends on other teams that are graduating this year who are possibly looking at going into the draft. And it has me so excited for next year. Obviously, I can't wait for my senior year, but it now gives me something to look forward to after my senior year and this whole process. And there's so many talented players that it's such a competitive environment. And I'm hoping the league possibly expands because that would be helpful for me and others in my year, since there's not necessarily a ton of players leaving the league year after year. So that would be huge. And I'm just excited for it all.
Yeah, as you should be, because it's as we've talked about, it's a really really exciting league, and to again just to kind of end on this note, it's just really nice that there's finally women's hockey is getting the recognition that it deserves. And I know as you, I'm sure that you grew up knowing that like all we need is just to get the eyeballs and the funding. And now you're finally getting those things, and you're like, I told you, I knew that this was going to be good, and it is. So we're going to now wrap things up with a rapid fire segment of the show. Now, I call it a rapid fire segment because it's my reminder to limit the number of follow-up questions that I ask. So I'm going to do my best not to ask any follow-up questions, but I'm already going to tell you that I absolutely will. Are you ready to take this quiz?
Yes.
Okay. What is your go-to pregame meal?
Probably just be like chicken and some pasta or rice. Just some protein and vegetables, obviously. Or fruit. Try to get a little bit of that in, but mainly trying to get my protein and carbs in before game.
So imagine yourself, it's not a game day. You're just relaxing. What is your cheat meal? What is that snack? What is that treat that you give yourself?
Ice cream. I'm a big ice cream person, so anytime I can have that, I try to.
Okay, flavor?
Probably cookies and cream.
Oh, good call. I like that. Okay. Do you have any superstitions or pregame rituals?
Yeah, there's honestly, this isn't gonna be much of a rapid fire question because I have so many that I do. Even just like super small things, like I go to Starbucks every game. I wear the same t-shirt for warm up. I always start getting ready at the same time. I tap somebody's stick. There's so many things that I do in my routine. I know some people don't like superstitions, but I like the idea of having a routine, and whether that includes superstitions or not, it's just what works for me.
Is that something that you've had your entire hockey career, and has it changed, or has it been the same since you were in junior?
No, it's been going on for a bit. I think my dad put a bit of it on me because he's kind of wired the same way, and he used to tape my stick growing up. So if I had a good game, we'd stick with the same tape job. But then if I was on a bit of a streak of not doing so great or not getting the points I wanted to be getting, he'd change up my tape job.
Nice. Okay. Go-to pump-up song.
Don't necessarily have a specific song, but I to listen to, but I'm not a big person when it comes to that. Like I could listen to any type of music before a game and I'm still gonna feel ready for the game.
Okay. Okay. In the dressing room, then, who owns the music? Who owns the aux?
Every year I think I've been here, it's been a different person.
Okay.
So I know I'm trying to think who it was my freshman year, but my sophomore year, um, it was one of our seniors, Maddie, and then this past year it was Lily Martinson.
And are you all contributing songs to it periodically, or is it like, nope, I'm DJ, I pick the songs?
No, certain people definitely contribute. I don't necessarily do it because, like I said, I don't really have a preference. I'm just kind of like whatever's on, I'll listen to. But there are definitely some people that'll be requesting songs from time to time.
Okay. One thing that people don't know about you.
I like to go fishing. We've been going up to our family friend's cottage for quite some time, and fishing's always been something my dad likes to do, and he's kind of brought it to my brother and I and our family friends, so we'll all go out on a small little boat and kind of just fish for a little bit, and it's always been really fun.
It's pretty relaxing, so I get that.
Yeah.
One word your teammates would use to describe you.
It's not necessarily one word, but I'm the type of person that like a lot of my teammates will look to and they'll ask me like, who's playing who today, or like what time is this game, or do you know what time meal is? Like I kind of just always know what's going on everywhere in our league and with our team, so in a sense knowledgeable when it comes to that. But I've always been interested in the stats aspect of hockey and everything, so anytime somebody has a question about what's going on, I usually gets directed towards me.
What's something that remains on your bucket list?
I've always loved to travel, especially with my family, and through hockey, I've been able to travel to a couple places. But I definitely want to go to Greece one day and certain parts of Italy that I haven't been to yet.
Okay, I've done really well. I'm really proud of myself for not asking too many follow-up questions, but I do have to ask, why Greece and why Italy specifically?
Partially the food. I love Italian food. Um, and then there's also when I like to travel, I like to go to the like Caribbean a lot because of the beaches. But there's also certain aspects in Greece and Italy I know that have nicer weather and beaches, so I'd like to see that kind of part of it.
We're going to end with this one. Hopefully I won't have a follow-up question, but I don't make any promises. What's a lesson you've learned through your hockey journey that you wish more young players knew?
Yeah, I think I kind of said it earlier, but it's the whole idea around being able to control the things that are in your control. Whether I said it's like winning a battle or just making a small pass in the game or trying to set the tone or change the tone. When I keep my game simple and know that I can only control my effort and things, then I play a lot better. But there was a year or two where I was focusing on things that were completely outside of my control and it ended up affecting my play. But once I realized that there are certain things that I'm not able to control, I can't control what my coach is going to tell me. I can only control what I'm going to do out there on that ice. I started playing a lot better and it's helped me throughout my entire hockey career. So I think if I knew it when I was younger, when I was having issues about worrying with other things, I would have been a lot more successful even younger.
It's one of those things where and especially from an athlete mindset, one of the things that I hear the most is one particular phrase. And I feel like this is exactly what you're saying. And that's be where your feet are.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time. And it's a great reminder. I think it's just in life, but certainly as an athlete, because there's, especially at your level, you must feel a lot of pressure to always be on. And especially now that you've won such a prestigious award, do you feel like I knew I was going to ask a follow-up question. I prepared you for this. Do you feel that added pressure and that it might be a little bit difficult to remember to kind of, again, be where your feet are?
Yeah, definitely at certain times. Especially at the end of this year, there were, I think, three or so of us Hockey East teams trying to get the third and fourth position, which was home ice advantage. So we were fighting for 3, 4, and 5. And there was a lot of focus on, well, if they win and we don't win, or what if they do this, or what if they do this? And I was one of the people that was obviously notorious for doing that too. But we weren't able to win our last two regular season games, which ultimately put us in fourth place instead of third. So I think even today, you're still learning how to like just focus on only things within your control. But when you do it, it has a huge impact on the game.
Absolutely. And I want to say, as we wrap things up today, how much I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show to share your story. And I think one of the things that I'm going to take away from this conversation is just how, more than just the stats on a stat sheet, the individual that you are and the journey that you've been on to where you are. So it's absolutely, when you see how many goals you're putting up and the awards that you're winning, it's easy to cheer for you. But I can tell you, it's even easier to cheer for you hearing your story. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And if you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow hockey fans. It really helps us grow and bring more incredible stories from around the world of women's hockey. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time on Rinkside Rundown.